And welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. And I'm going to try and see if I can, well, it does look like I did.
Oh, there it is.
So what you're seeing here is this is a picture of the tabernacle that they built in the desert because this particular week we read about the construction of this tabernacle. You're seeing it here without the curtains. There were curtains over that covered the tabernacle, but the part that we reached in our studies was about the boards of the tabernacle, and that's these things right over here. All right, so we're going to read about those. Here's another way of looking at it, giving you some sense of the height of the boards. They're pretty tall, I guess. And here we go into the individual boards. Let's see here and how they were made. All right, let's see what I can do here. Uh, uh, all right. Are you able to see the text now?
Yes.
Good, excellent. Okay. Va'asita et hakrashim lamishkan, and you shall make the boards for the tabernacle. Isrim keresh, 20 boards, lifa'at negva temana, on the south side, 20 boards. So the way the tabernacle was set up essentially was to the four cardinal points of the compass. וארבעים אדני כסף תעשה תחת 20 הקרש, שני אדנים תחת הקרש האחד. These were sockets that they made, right, out of silver. You shall under the 20 boards, two sockets tachat hakerish under each one of the boards, hakerish ha'echad lishtei yedotav, for its two. Literally, it means its two hands, to its two tenons. Ushnei adanim, and two sockets tachat hakerish ha'echad, to for each. In other words, under each board, lishtei yedotav, for each one of its tenons. And let's take a look at the Rashi, and then we'll take a look at the illustration. So, lifa'at negba temana. So negba means south, but temana also means southward. Ein pe'azo, he says, this direction, mikzoa. So let's see. All right. So, you know something? I did not look up the word mikzoa here, so now I have a difficulty. You're getting this very raw, as you can see. Okay. Let me think. A pa'a can also, I think it means corner, right? So I think that he's saying that this particular term of pe'ah does not mean corner, ela kol haruach, but the entire direction. Yes, Judith, did you see something?
No, um, did everybody know north, south, east, and west? And how did they tell? Did they have compasses or
I don't know that they
have
had
they
compass.
agree what this agree
Okay.
where north,
Yeah.
south, east, and west was?
Okay, so I think it was based, first of all, on where the sun rose and where the sun set, because they realized that the direction from which the sun rose, and in fact, the term for Mizrach, right, has to do with the rising sun, and the word Ma'arav also has to do with the evening, right? So that was the west, and from that they had the opposite directions. It's quite possible that from very, very early times they recognized the North Star. I can tell you that the Babylonians studied the heavens. They studied the heavens for astrological reasons, uh, because from a very early time, I think humanity realized, at least thinking humanity realized, that we were just part of something far greater and vast than we ourselves as individuals. But they did have a lot of stuff figured out, and they did know about the cardinal points. And I don't know exactly when the compass was discovered, but at any rate, I think it would be based on sunrise and sunset. So he says the entire direction is called a pe'ah, ketargumo leruach ever droma, right? So he's saying in the Targum, again referring to Onkelos, right? He says to the direction of south. Then let's see if we had. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a little bit here as to what it's talking about. All right. So if we go back to this particular illustration, if you count the number of boards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. This is a corner board, so that doesn't count. The Torah will take that into account later on. But those are the 20 boards that it's talking about. So, and now we look at the boards individually and how they join together. The tabernacle was an incredible, incredible example of prefabrication. These are the tenons and these are the sockets. We may even get a better look at it at some point. We'll see. Here's how they fit. Let's take another look. Right, just it's simply, and these were silver sockets, two on each, as it said, on each board. So we're working from that description this is going to be a different issue here as we move on to it. Okay. So the point about this, right, is let me go back here, is for you to realize that the tabernacle had to stand on the terrain of the wilderness. And anybody who knows anything about ground knows that nothing is perfectly flat. And so for the boards to be able to stand comfortably on this and not to put too much pressure on the sides of the boards, these would accommodate, and so they could move up and down in a sense to accommodate the terrain of the wilderness. So that was really an amazing element of the construction of the tabernacle in order to basically accommodate the unevenness of the terrain. So really quite an incredible piece of engineering. Let's go on. Okay. Uletzela hamishkan hashenit lepa'at tzafon, and to the side of the second side of, or the opposite side in this case of the mishkan of the tabernacle, lepa'at tzafon, towards the north, esrim karish. Again, 20 boards. I want to mention that it uses the term tsela here, and that's significant because here it clearly means side, but we find this word tsela referring to the tsela that God removed from Adam in which to form Eve. That again is the word tsela. And so we see that the word tsela can also mean side. And so there is an interpretation of the creation of Eve that basically says that the original Adam was a hermaphrodite, and that what God did was he sliced down the side of Adam that was female and made it capable of turning around and facing one another, that Adam and Eve could face one another. And that's another interpretation, and it's based on the fact that Selah here doesn't mean rib, it means side. I think there's symbolism in the fact that we talk about the original Adam being hermaphrodite. I think there's symbolism involved in the slicing down of Adam to separate Eve, and I think there's some deep stuff which I will not actually try to tease out for you. I will leave it for you to do whatever thinking you want about that as to the nature of the relationship of a husband and a wife. So, going on. For Arba'im Adnehem Kasef, and their 40 sockets of silver, Shnei Adanim Tachat HaKeresh HaAchad, again repeating this instruction to be as clear as possible, right? So two sockets underneath each board, Ushne Adanim Tachat HaKeresh HaAchad, and in other words, each and every single board, two sockets. Going on. Ulayarketeha Mishkan Yama, and the direction of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, literally this says to the sea, which would be on the west side, right? Ta'aseh shisha krashim, you should make 6 boards. 6 boards. So let's take a look. The architect. That's the edge, right? Lashon sof. It's has the connotation of edge. Ketargumo ula sofe, right? So let's see. Let's take a look. Here, ulisyafe. Ulefi shehapetach b'mizrach, and because the opening of this tabernacle was on the east side, karui mizrach panim. The mizrach, the east side, is called the face of the tabernacle. Let me just accommodate this a little bit here. Oops, let's see here. We can. I'm sorry, it's moving up. Here we go. I'm trying to see if I can get this open a little bit. There we go. All right. Let me find it here. Sorry. Okay, I think we're actually up here, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, there it is. V'hama'arav, and so the east side of the tabernacle is called the face. V'hama'arav, and the west side, achorim, is called the back. V'zehu sof shehapanim hu harosh, and this is called the back because this is the end, because the face is the head. So let's go back and let's take a look at the illustration. Let me see if I can do this. I'm trusting that you can see this again. So here is the entrance. This, right, would be on the west side, and this is what it's talking about here. And I think we might be able to count them. So 1, 2, 3, let's see. Here it looks like 6, but he says 5. So it may be just difficult to count here. But remember, that's what it said. Let's take a look, right? Okay. Oh, no, it says 6. 6 boards. There it is, not 5. 6 boards. Okay. Ushne, let's see if there's anything here. No, we're fine. Let's keep going. Right. Ushne krashim ta'aseh lemikutzot hamishkan, and 2 boards you shall make for the edges of the mishkan, beyar katayim, at their edges, on the ends. So let's take a look here. So these are the 2 boards that we're talking about here, these ones over here that were on the edges. And I will tell you that this is complicated for me, at least trying to understand exactly what's going on. So I'll go back into the text. All right, let's take a look. Ushne krashim ta'aseh lemakutzaot. In other words, echad lemiktzot tzofit ma'aravit. In other words, one on the corner of the northwest side, ve'echad lema'aravit ramit, and one on the southwest side. Ma'arav is west, south side. Kol shmona krashim beseder echad hem. So all these 8 boards were in one order. Ella, however, Ela she'elu hashtayim, einan v'chalal hamishkan. And I'll explain what this means. But these 2 boards did not comprise the empty space within the Mishkan. Ela chatzi ama mizo v'chatzi ama mizo, but they didn't completely fill the empty space, but 1/2 of a cubit on one side and 1/2 of a cubit on the other side, near ut b'chalal, they could be seen in the airspace of the Mishkan, lahashlim rochbo le'eser, in order to complete its width to 10. We'll explain. V'ha'amar mizeh, v'ha'amar mizeh, ba'ot, and the 1 cubit on the one side and the 1 cubit on the other side, keneged amot, they corresponded to the cubits Ove Kashei HaMishkan, the width of or the depth of each of the boards was 1 cubit. Okay, Hatzafon v'Hadarom on the north and the south side, Kedei Shehei HaMiktzor Mibachutz Shaveh, in order that the outside section, the outside corner, should be equal or smooth, etc. Let me show you with an illustration. Okay, so let's go back here. All right. So each one of these boards, we're told, was 1.5 cubits, right? So 20 times 1.5 is 30 cubits, right? And if there's six, so there are 8 cubits here, right? 6 are the center ones, and two on the other side. So it's 8 times 1.5, okay, would be 12, right? And then each one of these were a width. In other words, let's go back here. All right, this might show us better. Each one of these boards was 1 cubit wide. In other words, it was 1.5 from here to here, and 1 cubit from here to here. Okay. So what we're saying, what he's telling us, is that given the fact, right, that we're saying this is 30 cubits, and if we're saying that the width was 12, right, if you subtract 2 cubits, in other words, the width here and the width here from 12 cubits, you're going to wind up with 10 cubits. So in other words, the distance from the inner distance, this is the halal that we're talking about, is this inner space. This was 10 cubits. So there was half a cubit of this, each one of the boards, remember, was 1.5 cubits. So we're saying that one of the cubits here was accommodating the width of this, and one of the cubits here was accommodating this. So since each board was 1.5 cubits, that's why Rashi's telling us that half of a cubit of this end board could be seen within the inner space of the Mishkan.
What's a cubit? What's a cubit?
Good question. So the sort of rule of thumb is that a cubit is about 18 inches.
18.
1.5 feet. 1.5 feet. Okay. It gives
Okay.
there are various theories. They vary a little bit, not terribly. There's some theories that say they were a little bit bigger. There's some theories that say it was a little smaller. But as a rule of thumb, 18 inches is in other words, 1.5 feet is a good way to look at it. Okay? All right. So that explains that, I hope. All right. Let's see. Okay. Vayhi to'amim milmata v'yachtav yu tamim al rosho. So this particular verse gives me a great deal of trouble because I'm not sure exactly what they are saying here. Okay. So to'amim, right, sometimes sounds like a word like twins, but we'll see. The onkelos, right? So he is saying that mechavnin would be that they are matching at the top. V'yachdav yu tamim al rosho, right? Okay, so on the bottom, sorry, milmata would be on the bottom. So they were, here we go, mikavnin milra. They were, so it sounds like they had to be set up opposite each other, that is, against one board against another on the bottom. Ukechada yehon mekavnin al rasheh, and like one they should be set up, right, on the top. The iskata chada, so it says, here we go. So iskata, I believe, is a ring, and we'll see what we're talking about. So together they should be tamim at the top, al el hatabat ha'echad, in other words, to accommodate one ring. Let's finish. Rashi's got quite a bit to say here, so we'll see if that helps us. Kain yeh l'shnehem, so they should be both constructed. L'shnei hamiktzoot, for the two sides, they shall be. All right, we'll take a look and see if Rashi can help us here. Okay. Vayu to'omim milmata. Kol hakrashim. Tu'omim zelaze milmata. So I think what he's saying is that on these corner boards, I believe he's saying that they should be even all along the one side, right? Shelo yafsik ovi sfat sheni shnei ha'adamim. That is to say, that the width of the lip of the two rings shouldn't separate the boards. So when it says Yehut Omim, he's talking about the boards in general. So let's I'll take a look and show you what we're talking about. Sorry, let me find the right place. Here we go. Let's take a look. So this is the point. You see how the rings were exactly the same. This is what he's saying, so that then the boards are set together. The rings don't push against each other, so that the boards are right next to each other. That sounds like what he's talking about. Let's see if there's another. No, this is talking about something else. Let's take a look. Yeah, I'll keep going and see if we can find. Okay, do you see how this is the point he's making here? That the boards fit right next to each other. I'll go one more. This shows you the whole side. Okay, it shows other details, but just to show, this is when he's saying to'amim milamata, that they should be right paired, right? They shouldn't, the rings, at least the way Rashi's explaining it, that the rings shouldn't create a separation between the boards. Okay, let's say what it is. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, let's see, find the right place. Right. In order to distance one from the other. Zehu shepi rashdi. This is what I explained. Shehiyu tzirei hayadot through, looks like charutzim mitzidehem. Okay, I know what he's talking about here. Okay, so I'll keep going, finish this off, but I'll explain exactly what he's saying here. Shehei rochav hakerev, so that the width of the board, bolet litzadav, right, sticks out on the side, chutz lidei hakeresh, outside of the tenon of the board, lechasot et sfat haaretz, to cover the, I believe this is what it's saying. Oh no, sfat ha'aden, this is a nun here, to cover the lip of the, or the edge of the ring. V'chein hakeresh she'etzlo, and likewise the board next to it, v'nimtza'u tu'omim zelazeh, and so they would be paired one next to the other. So let me show you exactly what he's talking about here. Okay, let's trust that. Here we go. This is what he's saying. He's talking about, he's saying that the edge of the board sticks out past the tenon. Do you see what I mean? And so that it covers, this is the lip of the ring that he's talking about. He's talking about this particular detail. And the fact that this too was on the other side, he's mentioning that both of these two, the idea though is that this is the width of this, so that they now stand right next to each other. Sorry, let's do this. Okay, let's go on. Okay, let's see, let me make sure. Okay, V'kerish hamikzoa, and he's talking now, remember, of the board that's on the edge. Shebeseder hama'arav, that is on the west, part of the western set. Charutz l'rochbo is cut out on its width, be'ovyo, again, l'rochbo, be'ovyo, and on its depth, keneged charitz shel tzad keresh hatzvoni. So that would have to be for the charitz means like the part that is carved out, shel tzad keresh hatzvoni, like the side of the north board, v'hadromi, and the south, kedei shelo yafridu ha'adanim beinehem, again, so that the aden, that the ring, did not separate the two. So I don't know that there's a good illustration here of the corners, of how the corners work out. Let's see, I think here we have it. But he's talking about this particular ring here and how that accommodated this board. Okay. So I think that what we're saying, let's take a look here. All right. I think he's saying that on the corner, that this, remember, remember, only half of the corner board was showing within it. This, though, had to accommodate the side as well. Remember, each one of these boards was 1 cubit width or depth, however you want to say. So what we're saying is that the way these had to be structured was such that I believe that the ring was created a little bit differently in order to take care of that. And I don't believe I have any illustration of that corner piece. But you can see that the corner piece had to be designed a little bit differently so that it could look and match the other pieces. Sorry. Okay, let's go on. V'yachdav yu tamim, and together they should be tamim. That is kamo ta'omim. He says it means the same thing. In other words, again, they should fit each other perfectly at the top, al rosho, at the top, shel kerish of the board. So now he's talking, of course, let's see what we can do here. I'll see if this is a helpful. Sometimes I think maybe this, see if this is actually easier. This is, okay, here's a nice illustration of it. Okay. But he's talking about up at the top. It also had to match it perfectly. So you can see that the ring at the top was a little bit different, carved differently than the other rings that were there. And you'll see these were sort of locking rings at the top, and we'll see exactly how they function. But he's also saying that it had to look identical at the top and to make sure there wasn't space between the boards. That's the engineering issue that he's dealing with right now. So let me just go down here so that you can see once again. Here you see these sort of locking rings, and you'll see better here pictures of how they cut a groove in the top, and you can see how they would take the rings then. Just another view of this, okay? Here we go. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah, there we are. There you can see how they would fit in together so that they'd lock the boards together. Okay, let's see. Right. Okay. El hatabat ha'achat, that is to say, towards each ring. Kol kerish v'kerish, haya charutz milamala. So he's saying each and every board, they had this groove on the top, berochbo, along its width. Shnei charitzin, 2 grooves, bishnei tzidav, on both its sides. Kedei ovi tabat, in other words, to accommodate the width. In other words, what he's saying here, and let me just illustrate once again, is he's saying that this, you see this groove here, was to accommodate the width of the ring here. In other words, this area here, the small area, had to fit right into here, is what he's saying. That's what he's referring to. Okay. Umachniso betabat achat, and he puts these 2 things into one ring. Nimtza matim lakeresh sheetzlo, and so it corresponds, or it fits the ring next to it, or rather the keresh, the board next to it. Aval otan tabaot lo yadati im kvuot, right? So he's saying that those rings, he says, I don't know, Rashi's saying personally, im kvuot, whether they were, kvuot would mean they stayed there, hein im metul talot, or whether they were removed. Uva kerish, I mean, obviously, the question here would be whether or not you'd have one ring just sticking on the top, and then they would sort of slide the board into the other ring. And again, likewise, he's saying, and regarding the edge, those edge boards, right, the corner boards, hayat tabaat ba'ovi hakeresh, right, there was a ring that was the width of the board. Nir'eh ki malot hadromi v'hatzfoni al alamata ka'eh, right? So again, exactly what he's saying. He says, it appears, right, that so Malot, I'm not sure. Uh, hmm. The southern, the southern, what he means by Malot, I'm not sure. Because Malay is with an Aleph, and there's no Aleph here. Hatzvoni, Alamata, okay. That it stood, it looks to me that it was set up towards in other words, to correspond in some way to the bottom. V'retzono lomar, and what he wants to say is shehadromi v'hatzvoni, that the south and north edge boards, v'rosh kerish, and the head of the board, kula, etc., nichnas latocho, goes into it. So let's take a think. Let's think what we're talking about. So when it came, we can take a look at the illustration too. Let me just finish this as best as I can. Umashi Katav, and what he wrote. Hayat Tabat. This could be trying to think if this is this, you see this is in parentheses, that possibly this is an editorial note here. Haya tabat ba'ovi hakeresh, that when he says that the ring was the width of the board, Ritznonolomar, what he wants to say is ba'ovi keresh hama'aravi vedok, that what he's talking about is that it was the width of the western board. Now, I think he's talking about, when he says the western board, he's not talking about the corner board, but he's talking about the board that it was in that one, let's say on the north side there, right? On the north side. Let me again take a picture, rather share with you the picture. Let's go back up here because we're talking about this situation here, right? So he's talking about, look at this. Do you see there's the ring right there, right? And so this ring here had to also accommodate this as well. And this is when he's talking about the Western board, this is the Western board he's talking about here. This is the Mikzoa here, right? So this is a cubit and a half, and this is a cubit, right? And it looks like what he's saying is that this corner piece, the space in the middle of this ring would have been a cubit, right? Would accommodate the outside, plus would go into there. So it had to be a little bit more than a cubit in width so that it could enter right that little groove there. And likewise, it would also have to be able to accommodate this board, so it would have to go into this side as well. Let me go into this picture here so you can see these things. Okay, let's see if this is helpful. All right, so we're saying that the size of that ring had to both accommodate, they had to be wide enough, so it had to be a little more than a cubit so that it could fit into this as well. And then when it came to the side pieces, let's see if we have a picture especially of that. Let's see here. I don't know that I do. Right here, we may have to do it on the basis. I mean, let's take a look. Keep going. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Look at that. Now you can see it quite clearly, how it had to fit into this as well. This is what Rashi is talking about. He's talking about this particular locking ring here. So let's take a look here. Okay. Let's see. Find the place here. Okay. Hadromi Vatzfoni, that is the north, the south and the north. Varosh Kerish Hamikzoa, and the top of the edge, the corner board, Shebeseder Ma'arav, that was on the west side. Nichnas latocho, it also goes into it. Nimtza'u shnei ketalim mechubarim, so that these two walls would be connected to one another. And this is where we will stop for today. So I hope in my attempt to translate the Rashi and also with the help of those illustrations, you could understand what we were saying today. And with this, I will, let's see, okay, I just want to, okay. Right, that's where we are. And give me a moment when I'm going to stop the share. Okay.
Was there 20 boards on each side?
On each side, there were 20 boards, and
And what
then
about the
essentially on the edge, there were 10, right?
there were 10.
Yes,
Okay. And
yes.
where were the poles put in? Where they had to carry them with
Yes.
poles.
No, they put them on carts. They put the boards, they had carts, mentions
Oh,
us in numbers, where they put the
oh,
boards on the carts because they were very heavy. So they
I
were put
see.
on carts and wheeled around on the carts. Okay?
Now they had to make rings for the poles so they can carry the Mishka.
Yeah,
Where are the rings?
that was for the various vessels, like the ark and the showbread table and things like that.
Oh,
Other than that, yeah, they were fine. So I'm going to stop at this point, and God willing, we will continue tomorrow. And I hope it becomes clearer as we go along. All right. Let me stop the recording.